I already know exactly what I'm gonna cook for the day. So I like to get all of my vegetables pre-chopped, prepared to go. So peppers, super wicked easy. You literally are just taking out the core. Then I like to cut them in half. Seeds. And give them a really nice julienne cut. Julienne is just a ribbon cut. Make sure when you're cutting, if you're not used to cutting, first time cooker, many time cooker, keep an eye on your fingers. All right, so julienne, super simple. You can take from this. So I already know for some of the things that I want to cook this week when I do my meal prep, I'm going to need the full julienne strip, but for other things, I need to have a dice. You can take this, and so super simple, I use a multitude of knives. Take the same julienne in your fingers, and now I'm just going to dice it right down. So I'm actually going to finish with all my peppers because I need to get all my peppers done, but I just wanted to show you it's so simple to take from your julienne and go directly into a dice. And now I've got for 2 separate recipes from the same exact item. I always use tricolored peppers. I'm not a big fan of the green pepper. I find that that is just too strong, but I love the yellows, the oranges, the reds. The flavors are different. Some have a little bit sweeter consistency to them. Others have a lovely pepper, but none of them are so acidic that you get that return of the pepper later. They're delicious going down, not so much coming back up. So again, I know what I'm making. So I know that basically a half of a pepper of the julienne per color of pepper is all I need for the one recipe, whereas the other half of the pepper diced up is all I need for that one. So when you start getting all your mise en place, all your things prepared in advance, when it's time to actually get all of your cooking going, that's when it's nice and fast for you. I don't know a lot of us that have time to spend an all day in the kitchen cooking up. But it's so much easier when you've pre-prepped everything, then you can either cook fresh when you come home at night, or you've now made 7 or 8 meals in one day, put them in the freezer, and then you can at any point in time put them in the oven. So you always have delicious fresh meal. Fresh is better, big fan. If you notice, I'm not going back and forth to a garbage. I already have my garbage bowl in the sink. That way when I'm done, everything at once will go into the garbage at one time. I'm not wasting a lot of steps. We know the old adage that you want to use your head to save your feet. Super important, same thing. Because I'm getting all my prep work done, I'm also making sure I'm using my time and my energy wisely. Julienne. Again, I want the other half of that pepper for my diced items. So let's talk knives for a second. Everybody has their preference. Some people like a large knife. Other people like a small one. I tend to either use this larger, beautiful 10-inch chef's knife. Henckels are my favorite. I think the weight of the pommel is really nicely balanced out and it makes any kind of knife work easier. But my other favorite knife, I love a chopper. You can do everything with this knife. It's my favorite My dad got me this one. All right, julienne and diced. I'm now gonna put these in containers so that those are ready to go for the next recipe, but I'm not gonna stop chopping vegetables until they're completely done so that I have everything I need for everything I'm gonna make. Onions. There are many different ways to keep the onions from making you cry, but at the end of the day, it's the fumes that come off of the onion that you have inhaled which makes you cry. So really the easiest way is don't cut the ends off of your onion and then rinse them under cold water. You always want to start with anything that is round because it's going to spin on you. That's how people end up cutting themselves. Cut my onion in half. Rinse it off under cold water. Now I'm going to take just the one end off. Pull off the outer edge. When you cut your onions, you're cutting it so that the layers work to your benefit. Because the onion has all of its beautiful layers, literally if I just cut this straight down, I'll have julienne. If I cut into my onion, notice I'm not cutting all the way. I'm allowing that end I never cut off to hold my onion together. Layers, cut through, instantly diced. Save myself some time. Beautiful. Same thing. I just want julienne strips or nice big, how about you want a half of a wedge, which is always so lovely in your pastas. If you're making French onion soup, these are nice, even on a sandwich. When you're planning out your budget, you've obviously pre-figured out what you want to make for the week. Now you make your shopping list. When you're trying to make things on a budget, you want to make sure that you have ingredients that work in repeated recipes so that you're not making your grocery list with 1,000 different items versus, again, I've got julienne peppers for one item, diced peppers for another. I've got for my pasta primavera or for French onion soup, and then I've got my lovely diced onions for pretty much everything, because when we learn to make mirepoix, which we're going to do, which is your onions, your celery, and your carrots, that goes in almost everything we make. So it's really thinking ahead of time. In order to stay on your budget, make sure that you can get your meal prep in a way that you can get it all done and feel successful. You're making sure you know exactly what you need, and so when it's time to get all of your mise en place together, I can make 7, 10 different recipes with just these items. These are all the pieces that are going to go in it. Really makes for you feeling organized and prepared for the day. Garlic is something that, for some reason, really frightens people. So instead, so many people will buy the pre-chopped garlic, and believe me, I do too, because it's fantastic and it's super easy, but it doesn't taste the same. There is nothing like a fresh clove of garlic. Another reason why I love my chopper is because I can do so much of this. Now I've taken my entire clove of garlic and I have broken it apart. You just pull the pieces off and your garlic is smashed and done and ready to be cooked with. It's also fun. Love that smell. There's just nothing like the smell of fresh garlic. Let your tools help you clean up. Keep your workspace super clean. Also helps you stay less stressed out. A dirty workstation makes you feel crazy. So every now and again, just give yourself a good cleanup. There is nothing worse than cooking all day, feeling really accomplished, and then looking at a disaster zone in your kitchen knowing your day is not over. So if you're clean as you go, so far what do I have to clean up? Nothing. I'm gonna take my garbage pull over to the garbage and I'm good to go and done. So stay on top of that. All right, let's talk about celery. Celery is an interesting creature, if you will. Celery has strings inside of it. Now, a lot of people don't know. You need to de-string it before you actually cook with it. It makes a huge difference. The strings are bitter. They don't digest. Change the flavor of your food. Celery is already a really strong flavor when you're cooking. What you don't want it to be is bitter as well. So you get off as much of those as you can. Especially, I mean, look at how incredibly thick those strings are. All right, so back to the julienning. Now that I have gotten rid of that, I like to even up my celery to begin with. Good, we already know that this is all the same length. Perfect. So if we're going to julienne the celery, super simple. So I could go ahead and put these directly on a crudité, a vegetable platter, if I would like, or it's prepared for me to start dicing it. Everything's the same length, everything's the same thickness. I can just go ahead and move on to dicing it if I would like. Fennel. Fennel is so much fun to cook with. And that's something a lot of people cook with on a day-to-day. But I love it. I love both the leaf and the root itself. I do use them in separate recipes. So when I chop it down, I'm going to take this part and use it for one recipe, and I'm going to take this part and use it for another. So it's all washed again. I am just going to oh, does that smell fresh? The cooking time on your fennel root is very similar to cooking with your celery, so it's something that you're going to want to cook with to begin with. It's going to go in your pan earlier than something that's lighter. I'm giving this a fine chop. So I started out by dicing it, and that went directly into a fine chop. I'm going to be using this in a pasta primavera later. Oh, you can smell that licorice, black licorice undertone coming up from this beautiful fresh root. So I am constantly regathering onto my board. It's easier when it's all in one area. Good, we are good.
Fennel?
That's the one. I'm gonna take the other end of the fennel and now I'm gonna slice this down. Again, remember I talked about anything that's rounded, you wanna give it a nice base so it's not rolling around on you. So I'm just taking off that back end. So now I've got a nice solid base so that I don't end up cutting myself. Because nobody appreciates your knuckles in their food. Doing some really nice big slices on this because I am going to be layering it, and I like my vegetables to look like this. I'm going to do something kind of like a vegetable lasagna, so really nicely sliced inside. Golden beetroot. These are so beautiful. I love beets, really of any color. These are really fun to use. Just a really quick peel. Look at that beautiful golden color. It's just beautiful. Has that same lovely beet flavor, a little sweeter. But I'm going to use this later in both my vegetable lasagna as well as in that pasta primavera. Having some root vegetables in your pasta primavera gives it that hearty, rustic feel. I'm going to cut this one in half. That is just beautiful, that golden color of this beet. So we're cutting it in half, cutting off those edges. And you want to slice this very thin. Alrighty, green onions. Top part, chives. Bottom part, onions. I like to separate those out. I'm going to use them for two completely different recipes. So I'm going to start with my chives. I always cut the tops off. They look a little scraggly. So it just allows me to even them up anyways. And I am going to place them nice. As you can see, I have a plethora of vegetables already chopped. So notice how while I'm spending all my time chopping and dicing and julienning, but by the time it starts to be ready to cook, I'm just gonna grab what I need as I go. Allowing me really to run 4 burners at once, cooking 4 things at once. Really good multitasking, because who among us doesn't multitask on a daily basis? Well, prepare yourself to be able to multitask effectively. Then you've got all of your stuff done for the week. So spend the time getting your mise en place in place so that when it's time to cook, you are so ready. They don't just do that on the cooking shows just because it's easier for them. It really is how you cook in the industry. When you go to a restaurant, they're not in the back cutting the vegetables for every meal. They've done all of their prep before beginning their service of breakfast, lunch, or dinner so that when it is time and the orders come in, they can cook quickly. So that's all you're doing at home, is just being effective with the use of your time. So with your onions, these are beautiful and fresh ones, but even as such, I really like to take those outer edges off. Not a fan. So I'll pull those off quickly. You can even just pull off a leaf down. Just basically skinning it down one layer. Fun fact, green onions have less acid than traditional red or white onions. So those of you that are on a low acid diet, and yes, I know, most of the time a low acid diet and IC diet are all onion free. But there are times when you are desperate for the flavor of onion in your food. Green onion is a good alternative because it's not as high in acid. That does not mean that I said it's totally okay for you to have onions if you're not allowed to have them. I'm just saying, fun fact. All right, I've taken off the outer edges. I am now going to take off the little rooties. So again, just line up all your stuff. One chop down. Oh, their little heads are off. Again, let the onion do the work for you. It already has all those lovely layers in there, so when you cut it in this nice, easy fine, these are going to break apart in your dish into all these lovely little circles. Or you can do again that julienne straight down cut for a finer chop. You see this cut a lot in your Asian cooking, like these, or they would just leave them like this. But as you can see, by having stripped them down first, now I'm getting a much finer dice than what I've got next door here. And again, I worked out my menu in advance of even buying my items, so when it was time to do my prep, I already know all the different ways I need my vegetables to be cut. If you need to make a prep list for yourself so you know what you're doing as you go and check it off, lists are fantastic. Helps keep us organized. So we're chopping the parsley. Some fun facts about parsley. Parsley is fantastic as a juice to prevent bladder infections. It is a natural diuretic, which means it helps with not retaining water. So super tasty and a helpful little leaf. So we're just gonna do a fine chop on these, because we're going to use the parsley in so many of these different vegetables. I like to add parsley, sorry, not so many of these different vegetables, in so many of the different recipes that you can use. And I like to put my parsley in different stages of a recipe depending on what I'm making. You know, if I want to do something where I want that fresh flavor of the parsley at the very end, you either put it in at the very end or after you've cooked and you put it on top almost like a garnish. Please don't ever use dried parsley as a garnish on anything. You can use it as confetti perhaps, but please don't use it on your food. But oh my goodness, the smell's coming up off the board as I am chopping the parsley. And it always looks like you have too much parsley, but you know, parsley just disappears as you're cooking it, so you can chop a ton of it. And it saves really well in the fridge for 3 or 4 days as long as it's in an airtight container. When I make chilies or any kind of stew perhaps with beans, a bean stew, I like to take the fresh parsley with me to work, and I throw that on my food after I've heated it up at work, so I have that lovely fresh flavor. It doesn't feel like something that was perhaps in the freezer and reheated, but rather a nice fresh item. Again, bringing all your items together on the board. Alright, let's move on to carrots. I love the carrots that actually have the carrot tops attached. Carrot tops can be used very much like how you use your parsley. It has a nice peppery flavor to it. It can go in your salads. It can go into so many different stews. We're going to put it into our pasta primavera. So again, we're going to separate it into two different entities because we're going to use the carrots for one, actually several recipes, and we're going to use the carrot tops for some others. I really enjoy these lovely little organic carrots. I think the flavor is delicate. It doesn't have that overpowering carrot to it. They're also not super thick, so I can just cut them as they are. Or what is truly delicious is you would just cut off those tops and use that entire carrot, and you can braise them in the oven. You can stick them directly in a pan and just toss them with some olive oil and some garlic. They're just yummy, and they have that beautiful rustic feel to them. So it really makes your plate pop. But in this case, for today, for all of the mise en place that we're doing, we're just gonna go ahead and chop those straight down. These are little rolled guys, so you wanna hold on to them so they don't roll away from you. You don't have to do as many at once if you don't want to. So these carrots that I've just cut, I'm going to add to this celery because this is going to be part of my mirepoix. What is a mirepoix? It's celery, carrots, and onions, and it's really the base of any soup that I ever make. It's the base of when I'm making beef stew. It's the base when I'm starting a chili. So I just start with the mirepoix by chopping all of those items. But I can tell you that if you don't want to make a mirepoix from scratch, there are many stores that sell it pre-made. Really fantastic. It makes your life easy. I always have several of these in the refrigerator at any one time. There's several of these and I use them at any given time. I always have them in the fridge. So these, I put those over into the mirepoix. These I'm actually going to slice down into more of a julienne cut for a different recipe. Woo! The whole booger just went flying away. As you can see, I use so many different knives when I'm cutting, and it's just what I like. You're never wrong depending on what knife you use, as long as you're being safe with it and you feel comfortable with it. Use the knife you like. Just cutting these into basically fourths, in half and then in half again. And they're a narrower carrot, and that's why I'm using the paring knife, so that I have greater control of my knife and the item that I'm cutting. And I'm going to line all of these back up, and I'm going to cut them in half again. So that I have just a nice thicker piece of carrot for when we do our pasta primavera. Carrots wouldn't traditionally be in a primavera, but because we are in fall, I like to use these really beautiful additional vegetables. It takes a little bit longer to cook them, but it's highly worth it for the flavors. All right, carrot tops. I'm gonna get rid of my stems. And any of the wonky leaves. So give it a nice once over. They have been thoroughly washed. All right, we're going to do exactly like you do with parsley. Oh, I'm going to swap these stems. I'm not a fan of stems in my food. It tastes and feels like twigs. I don't like twigs in my food. If you're a fan, enjoy. If you notice how I'm bunching them together, I bring it all in to the center. And as I go, I'm just twisting it again. Just allows me to get a hold of the carrot tops, the parsley, the cilantro, anything that's a leafy consistency like this, bunch it all up together. And I'm constantly walking my fingers back when I'm holding them. Oh, it's amazing the carrot tops, how differently they would smell than something like a parsley. You just really are getting that pepper scent. I'm super excited to use these in our recipes today. And it's fun to change things up. If you are getting in a rut and you're using the same things time and time again, I guarantee you, your family notices. But even adding something different like a carrot top or the fennel, it can change up something that you make all the time. We are going to be working with Brussels sprouts now. I love Brussels sprouts, but I like the crispy bits of a Brussels sprout better than I like cooking an entire Brussels sprout. So I like to shave my Brussels sprouts. You can buy them pre-shaved in a bag where they're already cut up, but how hard is it to cut up a Brussels sprout? So I just go ahead and cut those fresh. It also stops you from having those brown edges. I do not like frozen Brussels sprouts. They're mushy to me, and I'm not a fan of mush. Nor do I ever pre-prep the Brussels sprouts for my week and freeze that either. This is an item that when I cook it and meal prep for myself for the week, I keep this one in the refrigerator, never longer than 5 days cooked. But shaved, I can use it in so many different recipes. It's a great thing to just throw in hither and yon. It is a gaseous item. I will warn you, for those of you that don't digest a Brussels sprout well, your family may notice, but the flavor is fantastic. So really, to shave a Brussels sprout, it is simply just slicing it. And see how it just falls apart? These are the little pieces when you're sauteing it that get so crispy and delicious. I love them. So, cut off the edges. You can do several at once. You do always want to take off that stem. I love that Brussels sprouts are having a big comeback. This was a vegetable when I was a child, people would make fun of, oh, you have to eat your Brussels sprouts. And now it's become a thing that they serve in all the fun, hip little restaurants. Everybody's got Brussels sprouts. I love that this vegetable has come back, but it's not come back as something that you make fun of. Rather, it's something that people really enjoy. And it is so good with a multitude of different flavors and sauces. I love it with garlic and sriracha just as much as I love it with some maple syrup. So I chop and meal prep the same day. It is time to do our heirloom tomatoes. I love cooking with heirlooms. I love the different colors, and we eat as much with our eyes as we do with our palates, and so why not choose all of the different colors of the tomatoes. So we're just going to do a very rough chop on these. We're not using a large tomato, so there's not much you have to do. This tiny little thing doesn't bother me. If it bothers you, you can always just cut off the edges. But I'm just cutting these in fours, so I can just throw them directly into the pan with the garlic. Oh, it's just so pretty inside. Very just rough, doesn't have to be perfect. As you know, the tomato doesn't stay at this same shape once you start cooking it. So it's just so that it is smaller and they all cook at relatively the same consistency and time. It's really fun when you go to the store. Farmers markets are even better. To add something new to your family's meals once a week. Add one new thing. Try a new vegetable. Try a crazy looking fruit. That's how you expand your children's palates and your own. We all get caught in ruts from time to time, and it's really important that in order to expand it, you have to try new things. So it's nice to challenge yourself, adding that one new item every week to your meals. All right, those are done. Look how beautiful those colors are. That's just gorgeous. Fabulous everything looks, and I already feel like I've really accomplished something today. The smells have filled the room. I really feel good, and I hope you do too.